I'm Chris, and welcome to episode 9 of the Reunion Church podcast. This is Sunday Recaps, where we discuss a couple key points from the previous service for those that missed it, discussing how it may help you live out your faith. And, given the conversation and given what we kind of talked about last night, Andrew, we kind of had a different pace than normal. We had a very specific subject we were talking about as far as our series, An Ordinary Life. And that was kind of primarily the week that you took off for vacation, kind of taking some time with you and your family. Do you mind just, before even getting into the message, why you need to take that break and how that inspired this impromptu teaching?
Yeah. A little bit different, just like you did a different opening. What basically the resetting here. So basically what we did, Hannah surprised me with this, like, hey, we're going to go to this retreat. And it's actually where two of our other leaders and one of our other support pastors was at in this Sunrise family camp, way out in the boonies. I mean, it is out there. It's a 6-hour drive. It's an hour past Montrose.
Ugh.
It was a long drive. And so they hit Hannah up on I think it was like that Friday. And they were like, hey, we got a free spot, or you should make it down. You think it would be great? And Hannah was all excited for it. I am not like a outdoors camping wilderness type of guy. Like, I don't enjoy that stuff at all. I like my house and air conditioning and being close to stuff.
Cell phone service.
Yeah, I like all of that stuff. So I wasn't really sure what to expect or anything. And this was actually, so I was dreading the trip all the way up there, was not super pumped about it. And I generally don't like a lot of like men's ministry or family ministry type of stuff because it's all the same boring message, way too many talks, way too many sermons. You don't get to enjoy anything. It's usually, wow, men suck, like, men do better, guys, why do you and it's the same
or
thing.
It's the opposite of like, you are a bear or you are a lion.
Yeah, exactly. You are a wolf. Inside of you are two wolves type of thing. And it's like, oh my gosh, I hate this stuff so much. So I wasn't sure what to kind of expect. But when we got up there, it was absolutely gorgeous. I've never been that far east. I don't know. West. I think we went west for like 6 hours.
I don't know.
But it was absolutely beautiful. And being in solitude and seclusion, like, that is something that has been a consistent theme kind of coming up in my life for quite a while, of getting in solitude, going into seclusion and learning quietness and stuff. And so I was like, okay, God's obviously trying to teach me something here. Like, I need to listen and kind of see what that is. And the leaders of the camp, Matt and Chantal, are absolutely amazing people, have a huge heart for discipleship, have a huge heart for this ministry and teaching other people about the idea of really coming to simplicity of what really matters in life itself. And so we spent the week up there and just enjoyed having no connection with normal world stuff. And it was just me and my family. And there was a little bit of a message that we would do and a little bit of a study, but most of the time was just us learning how to be in solitude, prioritizing what matters to us and our family with God, and just spending time together. So it was absolutely amazing. So we took some of the lessons that we learned from that and brought it back down and kind of taught to the team, even though most of you guys are single, very single.
So. Yeah. Yes, that is completely true. And it was kind of an interesting discussion too, because like, you kind of just hit us with a bombshell question of what is the meaning of life? And we had a lot of interesting responses of like, the meaning of life is to work and to find something that you can have purpose in the value of your work. There's responses on relationship, find someone that you love and spend your whole life with that person you love. there was reputation, how people perceive you and what they think of you, and how that status gives you meaning in your life. Um, Before we get into the main parts of this, why start with a question that big for something as simple as this message? Like, what's the point of even trying to answer a question that um, introspective and large? Like, I mean, that's a question people have been trying to answer for thousands of years. Why have a study focused on that specifically?
I mean, if it's something that people have been trying to answer for years, it's something that, God probably has something to say. And it's something that results, like when you seek out what the purpose of life is, it will dictate where you're going in life. Whether you purposely try to find that answer or not, it's going to determine something. And so a lot of people, they may not ever say like, hey, this is the purpose to life, but the way they move in life, or the way they spend their time clearly dictates what they believe is the meaning of life.
Mhm.
And so, like you said, like, and that's what I challenge the team, like, don't just give me the Christian answer of what the meaning of life is. And even then, when we tried to give the Christian answer, it was pretty tough of what the meaning of life was, right? Um, but what do people find and try to look for as the meaning of life? Like you said, it was relationships, it's in children, it's in the job, it's in the career, it's in passing down, family, it's in, the state of evolution of just passing down your genes. Well, what if your genes are crappy, and like, whatever it might be, making a name for yourself, getting fame, celebrity status, living in the moment, traveling, seeing as much as you can, all that
Right.
stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was really weird because, like, at first it was one of those of like, we gave very general, basic Christianese answers. And by the end of it, at least from my perspective, we kind of ran out of things to say. And we all just kind of looked at you like, well, what is it? Like, like, we don't actually know the answer. Like, it was kind of weird of like, we gave up all of these options, these things, these ideas, and then just watching each other kind of react to it of like, no, that's probably not it. Like, that's not the answer. So what does that kind of do to somebody where, they're asking that big question, they're asking that question for themselves, and they can't find that definition of what their life is supposed to be about? Like, what does that even do to a person when, you know, they just don't know that definition? They don't know what their life is meant to be about. And they can't find this definition in their life.
So what, when people can't find their definition of what the meaning of life is, it's shown by what they're actually pursuing in life itself, right? Where they're spending their time, where they're spending their resources, what they're prioritizing in life is shown. And so while people can't really say it, if they sit down and start really thinking of what it means, they'll find it. But that's where we see a lot of aimlessness, and that's why we see a lot of depression, honestly. Because when people just live in the moment, which is a large portion of what most Americans think the meaning of life is, when they stop to think, they realize I can't live in the moment. And they get very, very depressed, you know.
Yeah.
Um, when Americans, when they do start figuring out, and not just Americans, but really anyone, when they start figuring out like, hey, you know what, actually this isn't really meeting what I thought it was, usually two things kind of happen. Either they go down a completely different path and become unhinged, and this happens even for Christians, where they thought they understood the meaning of life from a Christian perspective, and they've pursued it wrongly, or maybe they thought they understood what the meaning of life was for a Christian, and they've pursued it wrong, and then they go a complete opposite direction. For people in their 30s or 40s, that's called midlife crisis.
Yeah.
For anyone younger, that's the deconstruction, the deconstructionist, the deconstruction of their faith, and the movements that we're kind of seeing around that, where we're seeing a lot of people just abandoning their faith and moving. It's because they've had a wrong expectation on what their life is, where they've said the one thing of like, hey, Jesus is my Lord, and I believe that what the Bible says about the meaning of life.
Yeah.
But what they've pursued throughout life, they've pursued fame, they've pursued the reputation, they've pursued, and that's a large portion for a lot of these bigger celebrities. And when that doesn't add up and it becomes very works based, even of like trying to earn more and more, earn more of that fame, earn more of that reputation, earn more likes, which leads to favor, which leads to love, that is a disappointment in life. And when they realize that doesn't meet what they need in life, it leads them to being unhinged and they go in opposite direction. That's what happens with people with their jobs and careers and why they go somewhere completely different in their life. Or they'll redirect and, they'll, okay, I'm going to go look at another religion. I'm going to go look at another path. I'm going to go look at, and they start aiming, well, okay, maybe love isn't it. So I'm going to go aim for a job. Maybe a job isn't it. So I'm going to try and find love. Maybe, it is children. Maybe it is whatever it might be. And so people will start looking for different things where they can try and redirect. But the tough thing with redirecting is that you start becoming a pinball.
Yeah.
And you bounce from one thing to another. And eventually that leads to depression because you've chased after 5, 6, 7 different things and none of it is leading to fulfillment if you're lucky to live long enough to pursue after those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually fascinating. I was just talking to my dad about this earlier today about deconstruction because he just saw it on Facebook and he was like, Chris, what does this mean? What does this word mean? I see it everywhere. My dad's turning into a granddad, love him and all, but it's just funny the stuff he texts me now of like, what does this mean? And, do I need to be worried about it? And it's like, no, you're fine. This will never apply to you. But as I was trying to explain what deconstruction means, I kind of quickly realized that there's entire generations, Gen Z and millennial especially, that are going through this, essentially a quarter life crisis where they're going through this deconstruction of like, okay, now that I'm out of the house, now that all of this crazy stuff is happening in the world and I see it 24/7 on my smart device all the time, anytime I want, what do I actually believe? Like, how do I make sense of all the chaos in the world? How do I make sense of what's going on in Afghanistan or what's going on with the workforce? Like, why is it that we have 20 million people unemployed and 10 million jobs open? What's going on there? Like, there's all of these like social issues happening. There's all this stuff that's triggering a lot of spiritual introspection. And it's just really fascinating, especially during this time of like, we're supposed to be getting better as a country overall. And yet people are actually feeling worse now than they did in 2020. So it's just this weird pattern that I've noticed. So we've talked about what is not the answer. What does the Bible actually say is the meaning of life? Like what's the definition that the Bible gives in response to all these radical different approaches to it?
Yeah. So I think it's important that we look at like, when we're saying, what is the meaning of life? We're saying, what is the meaning for living? What does it mean to live? Right. And there's 2 books that really kind of lay it out of why were we created in the first place? Like perfect. What was our creation to kind of look like? And then another book of the wisest man who sought it out all the way. And what does he say? Like, what's the purpose? Right. So we compared 2 texts primarily in Genesis chapter 2 and Ecclesiastes chapter 2 and chapter 3. And what you see is that they line up pretty perfectly between the 2 of what the purpose of life is. So in Genesis chapter 2, verses 14 through 25, I believe, what you see is that man was created by God to, number 1, work. There was no sin. There's nothing like that. So man was created to work, to do something. Heaven is going to be the same way. You're going to be doing something. You're not made to be lazy. You're made to work, to enjoy work. Adam was to enjoy work. He was going to enjoy that. He had many tasks that he was supposed to do. Another thing that is highly overlooked was that he was to eat. God gives him the command, hey, you can't eat of this tree, but you can eat of any other tree. Go enjoy my creation, is what God says. Go and eat, enjoy it. And so that's a highly thing that we overlook of like, go and enjoy this stuff. And then 3, it was that man was created for intimacy with God, So Adam dwelt with God, walked with God, and then intimacy with other people. We were not made to be alone. God says it is not good for man to be alone. He doesn't say it's not good for man to, that man doesn't have sex. It's not good that man doesn't have children. It's not good that man doesn't, whatever it might be, it is not good that man isn't alone. And so he creates another for him, and he creates this level of intimacy. And so that's an encouragement also for, single people, for people that have been single for a very long time, of like, no, you can have that same level of purpose in your singleness as well. John Stott talks a lot about that. So if you're someone struggling with singleness and stuff, listen to John Stott. He has a really good podcast and things around it. Some interviews that were done that were ideally around this stuff. So, and then when you look at Ecclesiastes, Solomon, wisest dude in the world, goes out, tests to try and see. And a continuous theme that you see throughout Ecclesiastes is that he comes back to those same three things in the garden. He says, man, you know what's the purpose of life? Enjoy the work of your hand. Enjoy it. He says, enjoy the fruit of your labor, the work of your hand, and then eat and drink, be merry. So again, work, enjoy that work, be happy with the work and content with the work that you're doing, feel good about it, feel satisfied with it, enjoy the fruit of your labor. So eat and drink of it because you've worked hard for it.
Yeah, you've earned it.
Yeah, you've earned it, and it's okay. And a lot of Christians really struggle with this. A lot of Christians struggle with that. It's okay to go and enjoy these things. Like, it's biblical. It's in the Bible. Solomon says this. Go and argue against that. Like, one of the first things Jesus did after the resurrection, hey, I'm hungry. Let's eat, right? Like, so enjoy freaking life, guys. All right. It's okay. You don't need to be woe is me because you live in America. God bless you, and enjoy it, right? Understand that other people, like wherever you're at in that stage of life, enjoy where it's at. And then the final one is, again, intimacy, where he says, enjoy your children, enjoy your spouse. Like, that is the purpose of life, because this is also a gift from God. And he says that over and over and over again. Everything else is meaningless. So if you go too much pursuing after your degree or your knowledge, so it's meaningless. If you go too much pursuing after, your job, your career, and it becomes a pride thing, and you're just trying to, like, hey, look at everything that I've done, and you're trying to show all of the work of your hand and trying to show that, and it becomes very works-based, and you no longer see it as a gift from God, but something that you've earned, that becomes an issue, right? You've missed out on what the purpose is. If family is everything to you and you want to create the perfect imaged family, and you're just trying to make them look exactly this certain way, you've missed the purpose of life. And if you never enjoy life, if you are ho-hum, woe is me, Maranatha, Lord, come quickly, I can't stand this world, you've missed the purpose of life.
Yeah. And what's fascinating too is on that last point, I think it was the very first branch that broke off from Christianity, was the Gnostics, of everything good in this life is not good. What are you talking about? Yeah, your body is terrible. It's sinful. You can't have any pleasure. They had this belief called a sadism, where you can't have any pleasure whatsoever. And it was just like the most backwards. And I think it was, the book of Acts or Corinthians, where it talks about that movement of people who sold all of their stuff and then just waited for Jesus to come back. And then the apostles were like, no, you have to work. Like, you're called to work. You're called to live life. You can't just like give up and do nothing. Like, that's actually doing harm to the kingdom of God.
Do something. Go.
Yeah. Just go do something. Like,
right. Yeah. And I really believe that the church has had a lot of Gnosticism really creep in to its doctrines, because we've missed the connection with our physical bodies, with our physical world, with how God has made us physical and limited beings. with our spiritual and our soulistic life. And so there's a lot that I think, like, with the way that we think and view the world, that is actually very Gnostic, and we need to be very careful on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was even a quote that you mentioned later in your message where you said, quote, "We might know what is important in life, but so much can dilute that importance." So kind of thinking about that quote, we kind of spent some time talking about concentrated versus diluted. Can you kind of explain the difference between the two and what ultimately can dilute our priorities in life, like the things that lead to the meaning in life?
Yeah, so it's the things that, anything that can dilute it, again, is too much of something, right? Where you dilute too much of your workplace, what we had talked about, dilute too much of your family, it becomes too much of a priority, or you add too much of something. If you add more and more and more ingredients, it's like when when we were all middle schoolers, we thought it was the coolest thing for us to go to the soda things, and we just try all the different flavors. And
At
the
the same
reality is,
time,
after you do more than like 3, it's just a gross flavor, right? Because you've
yeah,
diluted it to a point of like, what is this? And so we think in life, like, man, I'm just going to do all the things in life. I'm going to do everything. And we just keep piling more and more onto our plates. And we've diluted life of like, oh, I'm going to be Instagram famous, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be known for this, and I'm going to be able to do this job, and I'm going to make this much of this job, and I'm going to be able to have this family, and I'm going to be able to, but I'm also going to really enjoy my job, but I also need to be able to live in this really nice house. And then I also need to be able to, and you miss the purpose of life, and you dilute it. You dilute the crap out of it that way. And it's, think about kids making hot chocolate, right? I don't like hot chocolate at all. I think it's disgusting stuff.
yeah,
But
that's a biblical truth right there.
yeah, very good. But when kids make it, it's 100 times worse, 100 times. And so, like, Luke has the biggest sweet tooth ever, and he will add like just a cup of syrup into it.
Gosh.
Like, and you're like, this isn't even good, right? Like, a little bit of it, like, yeah, makes it nice and sweet, and it's pretty good. It's not just hot water at that point.
Yeah.
But when you add too much of it, if you add too much of a focus on just, man, I want to spend, millennials right now, Barna Group just published a study, they're spending more time with their kids than the previous generation. That's fantastic. That is good, right?
Yeah.
But are they doing anything with them that's intentional? Are they
Yeah.
actually doing something with them of like, what about teaching them the biblical truths? What about, not just doing everything they want to do or trying to raise them to be the perfect sport athlete? Because that's honestly the biggest struggle, where it's like they're going to do all these sports and we miss everything else in life. And we're doing all these club activities and, all these baseball activities, whatever it might be. And then, oh, they don't do anything else. Well, cool, congratulations. Like, you really made family a big focus, but you missed out on life. And now you've had your kid miss out on life too, because there's more to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's such a weird problem because, like, it, Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Like, you can't just have everything and expect it to work out. Like, there's got to be some sort of balance with our priorities. And,
Does he say that in the Jackie Chan version? I've only seen
I'm summarizing.
Okay.
I haven't seen that movie in years, but I'm pretty sure he said that. But like, there's so many things vying for our attention too, of like, not just other people, but like advertisements, like you mentioned, that essentially 5,000 a day is the amount of impressions, is what you call it in our world, but essentially impressions or interactions with something that's trying to get your attention. And we're just seeing stuff over and over and over, trying to take us away from the priorities of life, from the meaning of life. In order to stay focused on those priorities, how do we do that? Like, what do we know as a priority, and what do we know as just some empty impression of an advertisement or something that's not as big of a deal as we think it is, or it's being advertised to be? Like, how do you figure out what's a priority in life?
So when you know what the purpose of life is biblically, okay, this is what the purpose of life is, right? To enjoy the work of my hands, to enjoy the fruit of my hands, eat and drink and enjoy this creation, to enjoy my family and God. Okay. Those are my priorities. But those are pretty abstract things.
Yeah.
What does that tangibly look like? And so each person, and then it's like, well, what if I don't have a family yet, right? What if, what does that kind of look like for me? So you start creating what your priorities are going to look like for you, and start really thinking of like, man, what are the top things in corporate world? And this is something they taught at the camp, which I totally forgot about that, because I remember working for some of the large corporations. They talk about this all the time. They use this lingo called big rocks. What are the big rocks? So you come up with a big initiative. What is your main goal that you're going to hit? We're going to find the purpose of life. We're going to be known for impacting eternity and actually knowing what that is. And then, we're going to still go after and we're going to have these big rocks, or these big goals essentially that we're going to focus around. And
Right.
like everything comes back to these. And that's all we focus on. Everything we do is intentional about these big rocks. And so there's really you can do about 4, maybe 5 at the most, 3 to 5 is kind of the limit of these priorities. And you kind of categorize of like, okay, for me to enjoy work, work is going to be a priority for me. Okay. For me, the family is going to be a priority for me. And so you start breaking down of like, what does a big rock around that kind of look like for you? Okay. If work is a priority, okay, I'm going to enjoy work. And so that becomes a big rock for you, to enjoy work. And so everything in life around work filters around that. And then family filters around that. And then health filters around that. And then spirituality filters around that. Whatever it might be. But they're overall concepts that you start filtering through all the other things that get thrown at you. And so it gives you a way to kind of view the world and filter through everything that is coming your way. And you can basically say, nope, you know what, that doesn't fall under one of my priorities. That can be pushed off. And I make time for the things that are really important to me. Because the reality is, we got so much stuff being thrown at us that we're saying, hey, these things are important to me. But we spend 2 or 3 hours on YouTube. We spend a lot of time sleeping. We spend a lot of time. I just finished this book by Cal Newport called Deep Work. And it talks in there about how the reality is we don't really know where we're spending our time and how much we're spending our time in as well. And so, you might say these are your priorities. And you're like, but I just don't know where the time goes. Well, you might think you only spend half an hour watching TV.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
But the reality is, no, you spend 4 hours watching TV. The average American still spends 4 hours a day watching TV.
Yeah.
The average person who says, oh, I only get like 6 hours of sleep. No, studies show the average American, the person who says that, who puts out on the study, you actually get 8.5. The person who says like, oh man, I work so many hours, I work 50 hours a week. No, you work 40.5 a week. I work 70 hours a week. No, you work 60 hours a week is what the studies show. And the reality is you just don't know where you spend your time. You're not good at time management. And because you let everything else take your time. And so don't give yourself don't give yourself an excuse. Stop making up excuses, whatever it might be. You don't know where your time is being spent because you let everything else kind of dictate your time. And so you need to slow down, get control of your time, and look at like these big rocks of like, cool. All right. For us as a family, our big rocks are Jesus, health, rest, and then it was our shoot, I'm pulling a blank. Don't tell Hannah. All right. So it was
I mean, you got 3 out of 5. That's
Yeah, I got three out of them.
yeah.
Oh, family. That was the other one. So
Yeah.
did I already say that one?
Maybe.
I think
Jesus, rest, family,
Jesus. Okay, Jesus, rest, family,
work.
work. Yeah, work was one of them. There was one that was a little bit abstract that I can't remember off the top of my head, but we have them literally written down on rocks.
Grace. Was
Yes.
it grace? Yeah.
Yeah. See, we showed them last night. So we have all these rocks on there essentially, right? That we literally have written these things down. So for us, for instance, family. Around family, things that are important is like us having fun, family devotions, blocking out time specifically for intentional time with us. So there's a time zone where we don't have our phones or anything like that on. And so everything we kind of filter through, we look at that. Health, with some of the health issues that we've had and things like that, we are making a dedication that we're going out, that the kids are going out for walks and doing more of those things more, that we're doing meal prep planning for everyone in the family, that we have sports and some of those things that are on some of a consistent basis. And so that's a big rock for us. That wouldn't be for everyone, but for us, because of what we know we have to deal with, it has to be. Rest, because of my personality type and because we're doing a church plant, rest was a big one for us because we have to rest. So Sabbath and taking quiet breaks where everyone goes to a spot and like, this is your individual time, and retreats and some of those things. So we have that, and we start looking through our time, and there's certain things that people will ask us to do that's like, you know what, this just isn't falling in our priorities. When people ask for that, like, 10th hangout or whatever, or when there's that time of like, we've got like that 4th freaking birthday party or wedding or, whatever it might be, and we're exhausted and we haven't rested. Wow, that's this wedding. That's not one of our top priorities. It doesn't support family. It doesn't support, necessarily Jesus in our lives, because it's not personal and it's not fitting any of our big rocks. So unfortunately, we're going to say no. And it's okay. It's okay to say no. It's okay to do some of those things at a mediocre basis of like, oh, hey, people invited us to go to this one thing and they want us to prepare this. No, if I get a speaking engagement and I haven't been able to rest or whatever it might be, I'm going to say, you're going to get an okay message.
Yeah.
You guys better be okay with that, because I'm not a great speaker in the first place. So, so there's just certain things that it helps you kind of reprioritize things so they don't go out of control for you. So you take back the things that are important and you really start living, and like, hey, these are what's really important to me. And I filter all of my time around these things.
Yeah. And what was interesting last night too, when we were discussing this, was one of the objections that came up to these priorities was, well, I don't want to be offensive, or I don't want to offend anybody who is really close to me by telling them that I can't hang out, I can't do this, I can't do that, but again, everyone needs these certain pillars, these certain priorities that are fundamentals as well, to have some structure in your life, so that you're not just always tired and always doing something else that you're not supposed to be. Like, where do you find the balance between the priorities and this mundane stuff that is not as big of a deal? Like, how do you even, like, if we're to look at an average day, how would you structure your average day around your priorities?
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't anything about a balance at all about it. It is strictly, this is a priority to me, and it gets top choice in my time. So that's all there is to it. So if, I have someone that's super needy that is like, hey, I need to talk with you at this time. And it's like, I can't, I have something going on, and you have to be okay with that you will let people down.
Mhm.
Because guess what? That's fine. Jesus let his closest friends down. Jesus, you need to come quickly. Lazarus is dying. Okay. And he walks the long way.
Yeah.
Right. Jesus, if you only came quicker, well, I didn't, you know, like that's the reality. Like Jesus was not hurried by anyone. That's the beauty of grace. And you need to be gracious to yourself. You know, oh, grandmother has this 19th birthday party get together thing that we have to go and do. No, it's not in my top priorities for our family. You know, the first one, yep, I think it's important for me to go and see extended family, you know, because sometimes fellowship is important, but this one's a little ridiculous at this point, and like I need to rest and I need to spend time with my family. So, and you might upset some people, but you need to be gracious to yourself. And the reality is most people will be understanding towards you too.
Mhm.
And you don't need to give anyone really the full details on why you can't make it. So
Right.
that's the other thing too. Just say no. Like tons of business people are learning and talking about this. And if you're a successful leader, you do this very well. Where, hey, I need 15 minutes of your time. No. You know, oh, hey, I need this. No. I told Chris, like one of my new tricks is that if I'm working on something, I put myself in a Zoom meeting
It's
to
brilliant.
show that I'm busy when I'm
Yeah.
really not, because people won't bother me when they see that I'm in a meeting. And I'm like, hey, I'm not really in a meeting, but I'm working on something that's more important than trying to answer your 19th question that you
Right.
could find on your own. So, and you do the same thing in your personal life. Block it out, turn off your phone, whatever it might be, and be kind to yourself. Be gracious to yourself in these things. You're going to disappoint some people, and that's okay, because you need to take care of your own soul. You know, the soul is deeply connected to the body is deeply connected to the soul, and those are connected to your spirit, you know, and you need to be aware of that because of how those interact to each other.
Yeah. And I think, especially for if you guys were with us earlier in our studies as a church, we talked about the head, heart, and hands of Christian living. And for people who are the hand or the heart type, this can be difficult. Saying no to people, saying no to, like, for me, it feels great. I'm a thinker. I'm an introvert. I'm like, heck yeah, I'm going to say no to you. I can't wait. Like,
Right.
but there's other people that are the opposite of me, and they're just wired differently. They're just like, I can't say no to people. And there's a quote, I want to say Timothy Keller, but it's probably not. It was somebody else I was listening to earlier this week. And they
He's
said,
a super smart guy that people respect. So go
yeah,
for it.
super smart guy that people respect, probably bald and white. Just, you'll find him if you Google it. And they said, when Jesus commands us to love your neighbor as yourself, if you don't love yourself, you can't love your neighbor. And I was like, oh, I've never thought of it that way. Like, you literally cannot love your neighbor if you don't know what it means to love yourself. So taking the time to focus on those priorities for yourself and for your family is actually more beneficial to other people than you realize. I think one passage that really stands out is Mark chapter 14, when the news of John the Baptist goes to Jesus that he passed away, he died. John the Baptist was essentially Jesus' best friend, the only person outside of Mary that truly understood why Jesus was doing what he did. One of two people died. He had two people in his corner, and one of them was dead. Huge, devastating loss. And the first thing Jesus does is he stops all ministry, he isolates himself, and he rests and he prays and he mourns the loss of his friend. And I just think it's one of the most fascinating scriptures in all of the Bible, that at the peak of his ministry, when all of this good stuff is happening, he's healing people, he's going town to town, he gets this news and he completely cuts it off, because he knew he could not be as effective if he didn't take the time to do that. And even though that's a tragic situation, you might just have a long day at work and you need to take a nap. It might just be like something way more mundane than a tragedy or a mourning the loss of somebody. And that's okay. So I guess on that note too, Andrew, with the priorities and thinking about all of that, what are some practical guidelines we can kind of give people as we wrap up here, when they work on their own priorities? What are some things they should know of this is really a priority and this is not? Like, what's a good filter to?
And the way to kind of look at it, is this really a priority or not, is does it impact eternity, right? Is it something that is actually impacting your eternity, that has a lasting impact as well? That's huge for you to be able to look through those. One of the, and I'm trying to remember exactly how it quotes, but like, are you looking to be like just successful in this, or are you looking to be significant, right? And so if your priority is just making you look successful, it's not a good priority. It's something that needs to get lost.
Yeah.
If it's something that makes significance in others' lives, in your life, it's something that should be going on, right? Is it something that you're going to be happy with that you did 48 hours from now or 48 years from now? Because that's huge for you to be able to look at long term. You might be really happy you did it 48 hours. You might be looking at it 48 years from now and be like, yeah, it doesn't have that much of a significance. Well, then it's probably not a big priority. Something else that will help you put it in concept: look at your life by weeks. You can do this on Google, life by weeks. How many weeks are in a lifespan? How many weeks are in years? How many weeks are in 72 years, 76 years? That's the average lifespan of a man. And put your age where you're at by week. And we did this as a task up at this retreat, and it puts it in perspective. These are how many weeks you have left in your life. You've already lived X amount. You only have this many weeks left to live, because so many of us live weekend by weekend.
Yeah.
And then it's up. Even pastors, Sunday's coming at an alarming pace. And so they're always getting ready for Sunday.
Yeah.
But man, they miss out every day in between on how good every day in between is. Slow it down. Look at how many years, how many weeks you have left. If the average life of a man is 76 right now, the average life of a woman is 82 or something like that. How many weeks do you have left? That will help you put your priorities into perspective. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, it was a really good message, and we had a really good and long conversation regarding this big rocks theme and this idea that we were talking about. So wish you guys could have been there. This is just a sneak peek of what it was like. We do meet every Sunday, 5:30 to 7 at the Reunion Coffee House. So you can check out the next message, where we're going to talk about the physical reality of things, physical infirmaries, how the five senses ground us and root us to what God has created and what God is creating in us. And more on that front, we're going to talk about next Sunday, and what it means to be physically present in your local area, grounded and rooted, things of that sort. Before we wrap up, Andrew, any upcoming events that we have? I know we have the Back to the School event coming up at Reunion Coffee House.
Yep. At the Back to School event, and September 19th is going to be our big Bible study through the Grace Talks. This is what we're going to be doing. It's going to be really great. We're going to have a bunch of different conversations around grace going on at the Reunion Coffee House. It's going to be a little different. And so really excited about that. If you're not going to attend, please just start praying for it now for us. Because grace is something that a lot of people really struggle with and understanding. We're very excited about it. We put a lot of work into how this will look and work, and been praying over it a ton because it was something that impacted all of us. So Grace Talks starting September 19th. And then, the Back to School outreach event happens soon. I don't remember the date, but Hannah does. So
Hannah will tell you on our socials, but it's the end of August. I think it's the 30th or 31st, if I remember. Yeah. And, we're so confident in this grace series that actually, if you bring a friend and that friend and yourself attends for 3 weeks straight, we'll give you a $25 gift card to whatever you want. So we're confident in the series. We're confident in the material. And we truly believe this will change the way you approach both grace and a gospel-filled life. So challenge is on. Find somebody, bring them, and we'll pay you to show up 3 times in a row. So with that said, thanks guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.